for glory in the Hebrew scriptures is kabod. And this is an interesting word because it doesn't carry the associations that many have with the word glory. While glory in the American imagination can be a terribly bright thing, a triumphalist thing, in the Hebrew it suggests something less brilliant. The word is probably best translated as heaviness, or in some instances, as a thick darkness. At other times, it is taken to mean luminosity, which gets us a little bit closer to light, but luminosity does not imply brilliance and blindingness as much as it implies a soft glow or a suffused glimmer. Many are skeptical about the concept of glory. In her book, Dreaming the Dark, the earth-centered spiritual leader Starhawk says that if there is one word that has no place in her theology, that word is glory. And I don't blame her for saying this. Glory, as in God, guns, and glory, or God, gold, and glory, has a violent legacy. These phrases were used to justify military might, colonial expansion, and the American necrophilic love for weapons. Glory, as in the glory of God, is also used in Christian theology to shore up its claims. It puts a halo around the orthodox or right way to think about things. The glory of God is the glory of the right way to think about God. Glory encircles orthodoxy and justifies its violence and exclusion against enemies. There are so many reasons to hate the word. But I'm curious about our language, about our words, about what the word glory is doing here. I tend to think about words as setting down survey stakes over a particular kind of experience that is ineffable and always promising to kind of push past those limits. There are always parts of that experience that the word is going to miss. And when orthodoxy and empire set down their property markers, we can be pretty sure that they are missing something or even suppressing it. The idea of kabod was not so easily captured by language, by empire, by orthodoxy, in part because it is rife with contradictions. It was dark and it was light. It was heavenly, but it was also earthy, heavy as a rock. It was ethereal, but it was also thick. In the Hebrew scriptures, it was an epiphany of God that often was represented in the terrible storm, the anvil cloud that roils with lightning. That particular cloud, the cumulonimbus incus, has a rim around the top that is packed with ice crystals, and its insides churn. They are chaotic. It is difficult to look at, I think, without feeling some sense of threat, even with our sophisticated technology, which predicts the weathers and shelters us from the elements. I cannot help but feel exposed, vulnerable when I look at one of those clouds. It is not just that I observe something great and terrible, it is that I understand my own size and capabilities in relation to it. I am dwarfed and made humble. That, I think, helps us wade out past the boundary waters of imperialism and violence to go deeper to something more existential. The experience of glory, writes one religious theorist, is a feeling of one's own submergence, of being but dust and ashes and nothingness. We are impotent against its overpowering might. This is the numinous raw material that makes for a feeling of religious humility, that person writes. It's probably why many theologians say that the fundamental experience of glory is not pleasant recognition, it's rather terror. It's the particular terror of approaching the profundity of a universe that shatters every attempt to grasp it. Glory is not the affirmation of a divine presence that we can neatly prescribe and put into words and theology. It is also the recognition of the void at the heart of any such attempt, the terrifying void at the heart of every human effort to create and expand and explore. Because the glory of what this is, whatever this is encircled by our inability to know it. Maybe this is why kabod, that ancient word for glory, was not brilliance, but rather thick darkness. But we can also see how the violent powers of empire were able to co-opt this concept of glory. The idea of being impotent against overpowering might, as that theologian put it, is so easily witnessed in the glorious flash of the sword. Glory is made to encircle the powers of this world and is used as the motor of domination and fundamentalism. Next weekends, we will make plans to celebrate America, the founding of an empire with all of its shining imperial ambitions. As President Trump recently put it, the U.S. Army will heap glory upon glory. But the thing is, empires and dogma can't contain glory because glory always leaks out. This is because, as the philosopher Emmanuel Levinas puts it, we see the glory of transcendence in the face of the other. His idea is that the face of the other represents an inexpressible mystery, an infinite complexity and singularity that issues a demand for respect and recognition. In this way, the face of the other person reclaims a part of that glory that had been stolen and co-opted by empire, in suggesting that a person, no matter how diminished or degraded, vulnerable or impoverished, contains its flesh. This exposes and undermines the false glory of worldly powers. And maybe this is where the other sense of kabod emerges, the sense of it being a heavy weight. Our obligations to others, to the glory that is witnessed in another person's face, they weigh on us. That obligation weighs on us. It weighs on our conscience. We might turn away from the face of the other and let that person continue to suffer. There are so many reasons that we might do this. But the glory of the other person, in this instance, will continue to weigh on our conscience. We experience that encounter as obligation, such as the obligation to raise a new one among us with exquisite care and tenderness. But that encounter, when we encounter that other and experience that obligation, it is not a weight only. When I encounter the face of the other, just as we encountered this new face among us today in the face of Milo Burrell, we may also be open beyond obligation into brilliance, transcendence, and inherent divinity. How can we not call that glorious? The weight of glory can be felt in another way as well. Ruben Alves is a liberation theologian, and his writings come from the context of profound economic deprivation and political turmoil. And it is in that context that he penned these words: "The glory of God is in happy people." I had to read that twice when I saw it, because at first I could not understand how he could think that. His writings are so incisive and critical of the force of power and what it has done to the people that he serves. How could he talk about happy people under the crush of global capitalism? But that, I think, is precisely where his statement gets its weightiness. This is not the superfluous happiness but rather the glory of a happiness that is both defiant and hard-won. This is the glory that we also experience in the Pride festivities that are happening this weekend. It is the glory of happiness in the midst of difficulty and oppression. And that is a weighty happiness. It is also a profound, deep, transcendent happiness. This week, a memory popped up on my Facebook page. It was a story from 1 year ago about the anglerfish, an anglerfish that some people named Icarus. Normally seen only in the deepest, darkest trenches of the ocean, it somehow swam to the surface. This black fish with enormous jagged teeth, no more than the size of a human hand, had risen to the ocean's surface and then quickly died. It felt like an omen, though if you asked me what message it had to tell, I would not be able to say. Perhaps it's a warning about the changing climate. Perhaps it means that something kept hidden in the dark will come to light. Perhaps, as one commentator in a more optimistic note put it, maybe it means it's time for you to follow your dreams. One of the cartoons about the fish was terribly melancholic, and I admit that that's the one that stuck with me. It depicts the anglerfish on the beach looking up at the sunset, and then it says, as it takes its final breaths, "This is so beautiful, I might never have known." Now, we humans have a terrible tendency to assign to animals experiences that are probably unique to humans. I imagine that is probably what's happening here, though I suppose we can't know for sure. Maybe the anglerfish was actually thinking that. But I think the cartoons and the commentary and the obsession that had generated about this fish was never really about the fish. The Rorschach test of the anglerfish that rose to the surface was really about the humans who tried to make meaning of it. And it seems to contain a metaphor that resonates at such a deep level for so many of us that perhaps this entire life journey, it will be worthwhile if you are able to appreciate, even for the briefest moments, grandeur and glory. The grandeur and glory of this world that encircles us. I love that so much. It rings so true for me. But there is something else too, something about that glory that isn't quite right. It's close, but it's not quite right. It's too bright. In kabod, that old Hebrew word for glory, is not translated as brightness, but as luminosity. And deep within the depths, miles below where the sun has been blotted out, the anglerfish glow with a gentle, suffused light. They are luminous. In the deepest and farthest reaches of the ocean, far beyond what we humans are usually able to access, there lives within it a hidden luminosity. The dark and luminous halo envelops all life, writes the theologian Myra Rivera, but we seldom perceive it. Have you ever perceived it? I'm not sure that I have. I think if I was able to stand up here and say that I was sure that I had perceived it, then that surety would prove it was false. But there are times when I feel like I've gotten terribly close, when the weight of existence bore through me until I was suffused by that dark light, that dark and terrible light that illumines the depths, shines in the face of strangers, and that threatens to unmake empires. That, whatever that is, for lack of any better word, it must be described as glorious. My spiritual companions, I love you. Amen. Blessings on this glorious journey.